I'd like to begin by saying that I'm not a historian, I'm a painter. And Firth is a historian and a writer. Joel Grossman is a historian and a scientist. If history has affected my work, it's kind of rubbed off on me. I was never a particularly good student when I was in school. I guess I was always drawing pictures. Thank God. I was born in Poughkeepsie, New York, and I grew up in New Paltz. And if you know New Paltz, you know that New Paltz has a wonderful old street of Huguenot houses, stone houses. And they've influenced me. The Hudson River has influenced me, and all these small towns in New York State have influenced me. My training was as an architect at the Rhode Island School of Design. And when I got out of school, I started working for architects and kind of very quickly moved into the field of architectural rendering, which is the depiction of buildings for newspapers or magazines to promote projects. I really enjoyed it, and enjoyed it so much that I left the firm I was with and I started working as a freelance architectural illustrator. I did that for about 10 years. I worked on probably one of the more controversial Manhattan projects, the Westway Highway Project. And it was a project that was initiated to improve traffic circulation on the west side of Manhattan. I wasn't a designer, I was an illustrator. I worked with some of the best architects in the country at that time. And the drawings were used to illustrate the project. They were on the front page of the New York Times. And I just looked at those drawings and all of that work, and it meant hardly anything to me. I thought, if I don't get a kick out of this, I must be doing something really wrong. And around that time, I was asked if I could work with an archaeologist on a project in Troy, New York. It was a wire factory, and they had found some of the foundations of this building, and they wanted some speculative idea of what this building might have looked like. And I found that it was very similar to what I had been doing for architects. You start with an empty site. You have plans for what's going to be built, and then you try to envision what this is going to look like. Well, you kind of work backwards with an archaeologist. There's still nothing on the site, but there's some science, there's some bits and pieces of information, and I loved it. It was terrific. And from that point on, I knew what I wanted to do. First, I wanted to always paint or draw. Secondly, I wanted the body of my work to reflect my passion and my interest in New York State. So if we could have the lights, I'll show you some examples of some of the work.
I tried that. Did you try that?
Didn't work.
One moment.
Okay. I don't know what happened to the color.
Yeah, it's black and white. Last time I saw it was in color.
Yeah.
Color.
Yeah, but it's off.
It's showing up. Here it is.
I'm going to let that boot down, and I'm going to shut this off. It's going to take a couple of minutes to figure this out. Okay. So I told you a little bit about why I do this, and now we'll take a look at what it is that I've been doing for the last 30 years. This is a painting that I did called Winter in the Valley of the Mohawk. And I like to begin my presentations by talking about the people who lived here before the arrival of Europeans. And up in the Albany area, there were two very distinct groups. An Algonquian group, the Mohicans, and an Iroquoian group called the Mohawks. These are the Mohawks. The river that you see in the background is the Mohawk River. This is near the present-day town of Canajoharie, New York. It depicts hunters returning to their village with a turkey. And I was listening and noting that Firth's approach to her work is very similar to my approach. I don't know a lot about the spirituality of being an American Indian. I don't know that. But I do know what it's like to live in New York in the wintertime. And so what I tried to paint here is my experience of knowing what it's like when it's 10 or 20 below zero and there's 2 or 3 feet of snow around. And how it would feel, the body language of these hunters after trudging some long distance. So I try to paint more the human experience. By contrast, this is a Mohican summer camp. The Mohicans didn't live in long houses. They lived in wigwams. Sort of, if the long house was the Iroquois equivalent of an apartment house where an extended family lived, the wigwam was the single family house. This painting is based on the archaeology of Karen Hartkin, who unearthed part of the remains of this camp about 10 years ago. It's on the Papskinny Creek. And what these people would have done is they would have come down out of the hills and spent the growing season near the Hudson River, where they could fish, where they could grow corn and squash and beans. And then once the harvest was in, they would pack up and move back up into the hills. In 1609, Henry Hudson arrives. We know that. We're going to be celebrating our 400th anniversary of New York State recorded history next year, next September. Everything changes after the arrival of Hudson. He doesn't find exactly what he's looking for, but what he does discover is that this Hudson River Valley is a place rich with resources.